How's it going, guys? My name's Gabby. I'm a reporter for Banking Dive. Today I'm here with David Zacks, who's the VP of Compliance and Deputy Chief Compliance Officer at Kraken, the cryptocurrency exchange. Thank you so much for joining me today. So, obviously Kraken is one of the better known exchanges out there, one of the larger ones. Can you talk to me about Kraken's approach to compliance and how it's evolved as the company has grown from what it was into the size it is now?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when we think about our approach to compliance, we have to kind of go back to our founding story. So after the 2011 hack of Mt. Gox, our co-founder Jesse Powell flew to Japan to help them out. And he took the lessons learned from the Mt. Gox hack and he brought him back and started his own exchange. And so, two things that were really fundamental to Jesse was security and compliance. And so when we think about like our evolution at Kraken, it's really started with those two core principles of security and compliance. And then subsequently over time, we've just continued to build on those core principles to where we are today.
Okay, so obviously as time has gone on, monitoring for suspicious activity has become increasingly complex in crypto and in the broader FI world. Can you tell me how Kraken and the industry is changing to approach its detection and response to potential risks?
Yeah, I think, going back to the last question as well, Kraken's approach used to be more standard like a bank. Transaction monitoring, you have these standard rules, and when someone meets certain thresholds or activity, you trigger a rule. But we've gone a lot farther beyond that, and not just us, but I think the industry as a whole. It's a lot more behavioral now, and it's not just like the standard rules, kind of how the banks traditionally have done it. So for example, when we think about a client, it's not just really understanding the client at onboarding or a periodic basis, but it's like, how does that client continue to evolve on a daily basis? Once you really know your customer at an in-depth level, when they deviate from that activity that you'd expect, you can really investigate them in a completely different way. But I think one thing to know is that most of our clients, they're good people, right? So you need to have a very balanced approach.
Okay, so tell me what does that balanced approach look like when you're trying to make sure you catch the actual risk out there? Yeah,
so I think what we do is whenever we have an individual case, we really take a look and understand what pattern actually occurred here. And then, it's not important, I think financial institutions have a tendency just to take a look at large statistics and then they make rules on those. We actually go through and read each individual SAR to get those unique insights. And then what we try to do is just to make tailored rules to really look for that illicit activity rather than just hitting our customers with broad strokes.
Okay, so do you have a general idea of how much fraud and risk is actually out there, in your ecosystem or just the broader crypto ecosystem in general?
Yeah, I mean, there's been several different blockchain analytics companies, who put out these annual reports that take a look at the amount of illicit activity that's going on the blockchain. I think what's really notable as the industry has really grown and matured, on an annual basis, it continues to decrease on a percentage basis. And I think that's really positive. I think it's two things. I think the industry is maturing and having much stronger controls. And I think this is just, we're mainstream now, and it's really exciting.
Do you think that makes it less appealing to bad actors, that it's more mainstream?
Yeah, I think, bad actors often, they just look for the easiest way. And I think as the industry has matured and we have much stronger controls, it's not so easy anymore. So yeah, I definitely think they're going to look for alternative methods.
Mm-hmm. So I've heard you speak a lot about trust before.
Yeah. Tell
me why compliance is such a critical part of trust with regulators, but also with clients and partners.
Yeah, I think, in the crypto industry, trust is so incredibly important. If we think about Kraken for a second, we're one of the longest and oldest operating exchanges, but we do things a little bit differently. Every January or February, we release our transparency report, and we let our clients know how is their data being used, when are we sharing it, and when are we protecting their privacy against intrusive requests. We have proof of reserves, so we let our clients know look, the money's really there, we're verifying it. I think that's something that was really cool and a pretty big highlight for me is recently Keiko just came out with their report, and we were number one in terms of a bunch of different metrics, but the most notable was our security. So when Keiko took a look at our security versus our peer exchanges, we got the perfect score of 100. The next exchange behind us was 6 points lower. So I think for me to work at exchange, trust is so important. And without that, it's a lot of questions can be raised.
So what do you think Kraken does differently that puts it ahead of even the next guy?
Yeah, I think something that we've done differently is two key things. One is that proof of reserves. Other people haven't done the same way that we have, where we bring in a third-party audit to really show that we have the money. I think the transparency report that we've been releasing for years is also truly unique. I think those are two great examples of how we put trust out there.
So you keep mentioning proof of reserves.
Yeah.
Why is that not ubiquitous across the industry?
I think it should. I mean, I think the blockchain is so open and transparent. I think this should be a standard practice. Absolutely.
What do you think has to change for that to be standard? Is it a regulatory rule, you think?
No, I think this is where Kraken may have been a trailblazer in this regard, but I think the other exchanges are also catching up. I don't think we necessarily need regulation here, but I think it's becoming more standardized.
Okay, all right. So, how does Kraken's technology evolution compare to what we've seen in traditional banks?
Yeah, I think
particularly in compliance, automation, and monitoring.
Yeah, I think right now it's really exciting with generative AI and agentic AI, and we're fully embracing it. And so when we take a look at all of our processes, it's how do we take a look a little bit differently than most people. And so one of our cool inventions the team made is regulators put out announcements globally all the time. They have speeches, press releases, etc. We built an internal tool that monitors all of those globally, pulls out keywords and summaries and provides it to the applicable regional teams. And so I think this is an example of something that we're using compliance and AI to really make sure that we're on top of regulation and doing our best there.
How does agentic AI fit into the world of compliance?
Yes, so if we take a look at corporate onboarding, any financial institution, it's a terrible client experience. A corporate comes on board, they apply for account, and they provide all these documents. You wait for a person to pick them up a few days later, and then you start this long delayed email back and forth. And it takes days and weeks to really onboard the corporate client. But what we're doing with agentic AI, which is really cool, is when a corporate client comes on and they really have that strong intent to onboard, they provide the documents. With agentic AI, within 10 or 15 seconds, we're able to evaluate, are those the documents we need? Is there anything missing? Do we have any questions? We're then able to provide that back to the client while they still have that high intent. And so when we think about corporate onboarding that used to be days or weeks, our goal is really how do we do this same day? Now in any part of an AI process, governance is really important, pre-post testing, and we always have a human at the end of the loop, but it's something really cool how we could be a differentiator in the industry.
So that's interesting about Kraken using agentic AI on its sort of essentially as part of its team.
Yeah.
But then what about the other side of agents being the ones who are customers, who are trading crypto and things like that? Can you tell that it's an agent, and how do you make sure does compliance or the roadblocks to fraud, does it change when you're dealing with agents as customers?
Yeah, I mean, I think AI is really evolved, and I just spoke about the pros of how we're using it on the client experience and the client optimization side. But you know what? Bad actors are using it too. And kind of the standard processes that we used to have, they just don't work anymore. And so what are we doing? You can't have compliance, fraud, and security in a silo anymore. You have to have a unified platform where these departments talk to each other, share information, and have a multi-tiered approach. And so if we saw an agent operating, it may not be bad, but we need to have the controls to really understand that, to see what is normal activity and what isn't, and subsequently have a trigger review if necessary.
So what types of AI tools and techniques is Kraken using to strengthen the compliance and risk management side?
Yeah, so everything we do, we basically just take, how can we do an AI approach? And so if you're an internal employee and have any questions on our requirements, our policies, procedures, you literally just write it in and you'll get an answer back generated by AI. If you still have questions, you can open a ticket and we'll be more than happy to request it. I talked about how we're scanning regularly for changes in any regulations globally. That's all AI. Client experience. Also, when we prepare suspicious activity or suspicious transaction reports, depending on the jurisdiction, AI is able to also help us, draft those reports. And so it's really just embedding it in every part of our process and every team in order to help us scale very effectively.
Well, thank you so much for your time today, David. I really appreciate it. This has been a great chat, and I look forward to seeing you around the floor at the rest of the conference.
Yeah, very nice to meet you. Thank you.